What's going on YouTube? It's Jay Wilson, JWill07, Instagram, Twitter, Jay Wilson on Facebook. It's a pretty busy Sunday. We've got a ton of stuff on TV, but I had to get this video out. It's been nagging at me. I was talking to a friend over the weekend, or maybe it was the week, I don't remember. And I was talking about forming fish, and by forming I mean getting those vibrant colors, getting those fins to that epic level, getting that fish to that show male level that we so desire. And I had said that I believe that the size of the tank plays a huge role. The reason why I said that was I had a couple fish, and I will show you. This blue neon right there, and then this guy right here. I forgot the name of this fish. They were washed out. They were never juiced, they were just washed out. I will call it testosterone in the tank for the sake of not knowing what it is, hormone levels inside these fish, but there was just too much testosterone for these fish, I guess. Or maybe it was the size of the tank. Well, to make a long story short, I moved them to the wife's 29 gallon prior to them being the wife's 29 gallon. And in about 2 weeks, those fish had gained so much color that I was like, this doesn't make sense. They're in there with the same amount of fish per ratio. There's about 6 fish and a bunch of fry in there. The fish were the same size as them. There was really no competing, fish chase at each other, like that Calipatris and Vic right there. There really wasn't a huge difference than what you see in the 220. But the results were tenfold. So then I tossed them back into the 220, and here we are a week later, and the color is still holding. So my thought is that by putting them in that 29, it was like a confidence booster. Their testosterone level shot through the roof. It colored them up. It got them to a point where their color was going to hold, I guess, and then I put them in the 220, and it's held. There's got to be some science behind it. I don't know what it is, so that's why I'm reaching out to you folks. Do you think the size of the tank plays a role? I'm not talking about how stocked it is. I'm talking about the size of the tank. You could put the same amount of fish ratio-wise in a smaller tank, but does that smaller tank play a role in how that fish grows and forms? Case in point, when you look on some of these websites where they're holding fish in these small 8 by 8 inch tanks showcasing these show males that are absolutely stunning, these fish, their fins are epic, their colors are just outstanding. Granted, some of them may be hormone, the lighting is perfect, but does that smaller home, does that smaller tank, does that smaller, shelter play a huge role? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to purchase 4 or 5 gallon, potentially, and I'm going to put some fish that I think have potential. For instance, this guy right here. I think there's just too much testosterone in this tank for him. He eats, he swims, he's great. This albino, I think there's just too much going on in this tank for him. Then I'm going to put this guy in there also. I think he needs that little edge. And then this guy. Where'd he go? I don't know what this is. If somebody can ID, I totally forgot what this fish is. ID. So chime in the comments and let me know what you think. Do you think it matters at all? I personally believe that it does, but I want to know what y'all think. Is there a huge difference in dropping them in a 10-gallon tank with a few other fish to color them up? Is that why we call it a grow-out tank? It's a smaller tank typically than what we have for our show tank. There's typically the same amount of fish ratio-wise, but we're watching it a little bit more closely in terms of our feeding, and you guys get the picture. So let me know what you think in the comments. Does that smaller tank play a huge role? The other thing I wanted to kind of chime in about is I noticed a couple people were commenting and said that they were purchasing some beautiful fish at their fish store, and they got them home, and 2 weeks later they were completely washed out. What happened? And then there's probably a lot of people out there that first thing they do is they go, oh, parasites, oh my goodness. They start chemicaling the whole tank. They start dropping in everything under the sun. They're freaking out. They're secluding the fish. And they're like, I can't seclude all my fish. And they're at wit's end. Well, chances are those fish were hormoned, because hormoning is becoming this huge thing to sell these fish. They're juicing these fish, is what I like to call it, to look like these glow-in-the-dark fish in daylight. And then by the time you get them home and they're relaxed in their own environment, they completely wash out. And then you've wasted that $50 on a fish that was probably worth about $5. Chances are you could have even gotten a female and didn't even know it because they weren't invented at the time. It happens. It happens a lot. I encourage you to kind of talk to your place that you're purchasing your fish, whether it's online, whether it's locally, in person, and just ask them, where are you getting your fish? How long are you holding them for? Because if the person's turning them around right in a day and they're selling them, chances are they don't have an idea of if they're going to be juiced or not. If you go in and your fish looks highlighter yellow or the brightest red you've ever seen, and the fish is 2 inches, 9 times out of 10, the fish has been hormoned. That is my belief. So be cautious when you do it. Try to find a reputable breeder. Try to find a reputable reseller. Talk to them, ask them questions, because you can get beautiful fish. You may pay an extra $1 or $2. I pay roughly, the fish in my tank are about $35 to $40 a piece, depending on the size. There are some that are 50, but on average they're about $40. So you're going to pay that if you're looking for a decent fish, because they've got to pay that to get that fish. They have to make a little money. They bring them in, they house them for a little bit to make sure they're okay, because they should be quarantining, you know, et cetera, and then they get them out to you. So question being asked, smaller tank, does it play a role? And please, please make sure you know where these fish are coming from. I mean, we're washing out a lot of these fish, and it's turning these guys that are selling some really high quality fish, and pretty soon we won't be able to afford them. So that's my rant for Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Please comment and let me know what you think in terms of the tank size. And as always, holla!